The patient was on what he describes as a mission in southern Syria when the convoy of cars he was traveling in hit what he thought was a rock. In fact, it was an improvised explosive device that left him with severe facial injuries and a leg broken in 4 places. Now he's sharing a room with a 16-year-old boy who lost his jaw and half of his tongue in another incident. That patient can't talk, so hospital staff don't know the story of what happened to him. Doctors are now undertaking a series of complex operations using part of his fibula bone to reconstruct his jaw and soft tissue to rebuild his lower lip. Both patients declined to reveal their identity on camera.
جسمي في 4 كسور برجلي اليسار وهون عندي فتح الوجه من هون لهون.
These young men's injuries, while severe, are not unusual by the brutal standards of Syria's 2-year-old civil war, which has killed more than 100,000 people to date and injured many more. Some are rebels or government soldiers, many more are civilians caught at the wrong time in the wrong place. What's unusual is the fact that they are being treated in Israel, a country which Syria sees as its arch-enemy. The patients are being treated in the Western Galilee Hospital in Israel's far north, so close to the border of Lebanon that you can see it from the hospital's windows. This is one of 3 Israeli hospitals that have been quietly accepting Syrians with severe injuries on a humanitarian basis since last March. Israel has declared itself neutral in Syria's war, but 8 months ago, the Israel Defense Forces began picking up Syrians with severe injuries they encountered on the border.
We get a phone call from the Israeli Defense Forces that say we're bringing X number of patients. We don't get gender or injuries or age, just X number. And then we prepare the shock room or resuscitation and start treating from there. And then it's really a matter of a medical puzzle. What's happened? What sort of injuries have they suffered?
The Western Galilee Hospital is in a part of Israel with a large Arab minority, which means the Syrian patients can be treated in their native language. It's also home to the most advanced surgical center in the north, which means it's handling some of the most complex and traumatic battlefield injuries.
Most of them are suffering from penetrating head injuries. Most of these injuries were caused by bullets, gunshot wounds, but a smaller proportion of patients were suffering from shrapnel injuries. So some of these injuries were clearly combat injuries, but some of these do not seem pretty much like combat injuries. So like, for instance, if you have a 12, 30-year-old child shot from a very close distance in the forehead.
This man says he was riding on a motorcycle, carrying milk and bread he sells to support his family, when a Katyusha rocket landed nearby. 6 people in a car traveling alongside were all killed. He survived, but he lost his knee. Like the other Syrians we interviewed, he is so worried about reprisals when he goes back to Syria that he would not give his name or his hometown.
أخذوني إسعفوني إسعاف أولي على مشفى ميداني طلع ما في عندي ركبة كمان واعي رجعوني على البيت قالوا لي بدك تطلع يا إما بتطلع على إسرائيل أو الأردن مشفى عنا بالبلد لا يمكن يستقبلك لأنه ممكن يخلص عليك.
Many of the Syrians are unconscious when they arrive in hospital and don't even know what country they're in.
First of all, we treat them. Some of them are anesthetized or they're intubated and they can't speak. Once they recover from the surgery and they come to the ward, they're scared, they're confused. Some of them, they don't know that they're living in Israel.
The hospital staff do the best with the patients they can, given their limited knowledge of their previous medical history. The Syrians' rooms are guarded by IDF soldiers, whom we were asked not to film, and get few visitors as their families are on the other side of the heavily fortified border. While Israel says it is neutral in the Syrian conflict, piecing together the patients' stories, a picture emerges of an underground railroad of sorts, under which the Free Syrian Army brings severe war wounded, some of them rebels themselves, up to the Israeli border so the IDF can take them for treatment. Afterward, the IDF returns and brings the patients back to the border region. Thus ends one of the more unusual humanitarian subplots of the Syrian civil war. John Reed, Financial Times, Nahariya, Northern Israel.